I suggest you prepare thy anus for tonight. This FIC's gonna get crazy. Rarity placed the last of her rules on the fabric on the shelf. With a sigh of relief, she made her way to the shower. She had been working on a particularly large order and was exhausted for recent sleepless nights. She waited for the water to warm up and praised herself for finishing in time. She took her shampoo out of the cupboard and got in the shower. The warm water splashed across her face and relaxed her. Rarity's ears perked up at the noise. She poked her head out of the curtain and looked out the hallway. She was the only one there. "Sweetie Belle, is that you? What are you doing here?" There was no reply. Rarity had decided she must have imagined it, as her horn lit up to move the shampoo through her coat. She always wondered how other ponies bathed without use of magic. It must be difficult. Crash! A loud noise came from her boutique, and this time she was sure she hadn't imagined it. The ground slightly shook, and her shower head pulsed for a moment. Rarity turned off the shower and quickly dried off. If there was a thief in her shop, she was going to stop him. She exited her bathroom and looked around. There was no pony in the hallway. She trotted to the entrance that displayed all of her dresses. The front door was still locked, as she had left it, and didn't look like any pony broke in, except for the pile of cloth and supplies on the floor. She used magic to put them back in place and looked around. After taking a quick inventory, she concluded that nothing was missing and no pony had broken in. Then what made the item fall with such a large crash? Whatever it was, it must be gone now, and nothing was missing, so no harm done. But Rarity couldn't get over the feeling in the back of her mind, the feeling that something wasn't right. She decided to ignore it and go to bed. The clock said 11 p.m, and she wondered how she had still been awake after all the work she had done. She pulled the blanket up to her neckline and rolled over, away from the door. She had to force her eyes shut. However, even with how tired she was, she couldn't sleep. The door behind her seemed to taunt her, to tell her to face it and take witness to whatever it wanted. Rarity. Rarity bolted upright to the sound of her name. Some pony had whispered it, almost inaudibly. She looked around, but no pony was there. She opened her window to see if any pony was out there. Ugh. This is getting really creepy. The streets were bare except from the Royal Night Guard at the end of the street on his patrol. The stars above twinkled and the moon gave the ground an eerie glow. She closed the window and climbed back in her bed, her heart pounding in her chest. "No, calm down, Rarity," she told herself. "There's nothing there. It's just your imagination from being so tired. Your mind's playing tricks on you." She pulled the blanket up and over her head and concentrated on breathing. She felt so tired, but just couldn't seem to fall asleep. Her breath exercise continued for another hour until she finally fell into a fitful sleep. Stitch by stitch, threading it together, Rarity sang to herself as the fabric moved through the sewing machine. However, it wasn't like any fabric she had ever sewn before, but still, her hooves worked nimbly, because she had a job to do. Though she couldn't remember what she was working on, but her hooves seemed to. She began to examine this fabric. It was a tannish colour, with what seemed to be white fur all along it. On the end of it were what seemed to be purple rope, though she couldn't be sure. The needle of the sewing machine worked away as she fed the fabric through. Up, down, up, down. Its rhythmic motion seemed hypnotic. Her hoof slipped, and she put it back into place to continue sewing, but then it slipped again, and again. She looked down and saw the white furry fabric secrete a red substance. Each puncture of the needle had made a new hole through which the liquid poured from. With sudden disgust, Rarity realized it was blood. There was blood seeping from her fabric, and another glance over the fabric revealed that it wasn't fabric. It was skin. her skin. She looked down and saw her body was now red, the muscle bare and some bone showing beneath it. She screamed. Oh, so fucking creepy. Rarity sat up again in her bed, screaming. She kicked off the sheet and looked over her body. Her skin was on her and everything was right. She put her hoof down and noticed a wet feeling. She flipped over the hoof to see back and noticed blood. How'd that happen? She got up and made her way to the bathroom to wash it off. The wound was healed, but when she looked closely, she saw little pinpricks, the size of a needle would make. Rarity looked green and threw up in the toilet. She felt so sick and had no idea how the marks had gotten on her hoof. After she calmed down and her pulse slew, she made her way back to her room. She lay in the bed with a cold sweat beading down on her forehead. Whatever was happening, she would have to deal with it in the morning. She tried her breathing exercise again and continued for half an hour, in and out, but she wasn't going to fall asleep. Rarity was wide awake now. Rarity. She jumped out of bed and slammed her back against the wall. The voice had come from the direction of the door, and it stood one of her mannequins. It wasn't moving, but that's what the door... It wasn't moving, but that was what the door she had come through after her trip to the bathroom, and she knew it was not there when she trotted in. She lit up her horn, picked up the mannequin after returning it to the shop downstairs. She went back up and felt something press on her back. Oh, sorry, I should read that again. She lit up her horn and picked up the mannequin. After returning it to the shop downstairs, she went back up and felt something press into her back. She turned around and saw the very mannequin she had just placed on the other side of the room. She picked it up, back to the far wall, and sat there staring at it for 5 minutes. The mannequin had not moved. Either she was still dreaming, or some pony had moved it before. She stood back up, and this time backed her way up the stairs. She was not going to let some pony sneak up on her. Once she had rounded the corner, she poked her head back down, just to make sure everything was as it should be. The mannequin was gone. This didn't make any sense. What was going on? Rarity, let's make pretty dresses. She jumped and turned around. Right in front of her was the mannequin. Only now it had a black hole for a mouth. The fabric looked like jagged teeth, and its empty sockets for eyes which seemed to cry blood. Rarity screamed and ran the only direction she could, into the shop downstairs. More mannequins were down there though. They grabbed her and pulled the screaming pony into her workshop. Oh God! A pair of scissors was carried over to her, and they were opened and dragged across her... Oh, fucking hell! Dragged across her body. She screamed louder as the pain shot through her. The tools made cuts along her body and cut under her, separating her skin from her frame. Once all of her skin was off and her blood coated the floor, she was dragged over to a sewing machine. She could not cohert a thought anymore. What the fuck am I reading? The pain was too great. Her hooves were put up on a machine and run through the needle, sewing her 4 legs together. The mannequins laughed at her pain and pushed her further. They forced her head down so her lip was attached to her upper legs, and it cut through her tongue and jaw. Rarity was now unable to scream. How she was even still awake she didn't know. Was she still awake? Was it all a dream? She hoped so. They unhooked her from the machine and took some fabric down from the walls. They took measurements and cut out the lengths they took. They placed it around the body and fit it like her new skin. Several needles were taken from her pincushion as they began to sew the cloth onto her. The fabric was blood red to begin with, but wouldn't have mattered what colour, because she bled completely through it. Oh, this is no good. The colours are going to run, one of them giggled. I don't like this. Finally a piece of it was fit over her head, and a mask and her face run through the sewing machine. Pieces were fit all over her eyes and mouth. Her eye pulled out the first stab of the needle, then slammed back down, stuck on it. Rarity tried to scream again, but her mouth wasn't able to rip the strip sewn to it. Finally, they took a stand and impaled her midsection onto it. With Rarity taken care of, the mannequins turned to her skin. They worked on it all night and even cut more of it apart when necessary. Finally, only half an hour before dawn, they had finished. They placed the dress over their new mannequin and placed her in the window. The next morning, the sun rose as usual. All was quiet as the ponies slowly woke to begin their day. The night guards retired to their rooms and were replaced by Celestia's guard. And that whole day of talk of the town was beautiful new dresses in the window of the Carousel Boutique. A lovely white dress with a purple trim on a red mannequin. But it would never be worn, because Rarity was nowhere to be found. And here's my favourite comment for the story. That's a very disturbing story. I need to go look at cute kittens now. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you all will now go hug cute little kittens, because I'm frickin' freaked out. I don't think I'm ever gonna, I don't know, wear clothes. Wait, that sounded wrong. Anyway, like, favourite and subscribe. Why not send me your fanfic and I'll be sure to read it out. Or maybe not, depends how it goes. Goodbye my friends, this is Gmod Weekly signing out. Oh look, a mannequin.